Welcome to Slaying Excel Dragons video number 49. Hey, these are the videos that accompany the book, and we are in Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is all about charts, and this video is a complete lesson on Excel charts. We have 29 items we're going to cover. It is a beginning to end video about what you can do with charts in Excel. All right, we're in our Excel workbook, Excel is Fun Start. You can download that by clicking on the link below the video or get it from the DVD. And we're going to start on our CT1 sheet right there. Now, the very first question, of course, is why do we even need charts? Here's a table of data, and here is a chart. With a chart, you can immediately see patterns and trends. Charts visually articulate quantitative data. So for example, in this pie chart, we can easily see that kites are the biggest. We don't need to sort through in our mind and say, oh yeah, 37. We just get, boom, big green piece of the pie. So anytime you want to visually articulate quantitative data and see trends and patterns in a more immediate way, charts are perfect. Now, the detail of data summarized in a table like this is very helpful and useful. But charts just, boom, you get it. This is the biggest. This is the second biggest. Now, before we even look at different charts, we want to talk about chart junk. Now, this is a chart. We have some pie, and a pie chart shows you the percentage or proportion of each part to the whole. And we have some labels. It's kind of minimal, but it gets the point across. Now, let's look at this. That's filled with chart junk. Chart junk is when you have a bunch, things that don't contribute efficiently to your message. For example, kites are listed twice. That is a repeat. That's chart junk. It looks too busy. That's chart junk. This one is a warm color which pops it out. This is a cool color which brings it back. Now, that'd be fine if you really wanted a three-dimensional. But the worst thing about this chart here, and what makes it really filled with chart junk, is this is a pie. Pies show you the percentage or proportion of the parts to the whole. As soon as you have, this is called a two-dimensional or TD, 2D pie chart. This is a 3D. As soon as you tilt it on its side, it distorts the proportions. I don't really understand why a lot of people use these, because they skew the proportions. So this is just not a very good chart. And the problem in Excel is there's lots of fancy buttons. You have your context-sensitive ribbon. You have all these designs. You have all these formats. And oftentimes, you just don't need it. A straight, simple chart like this is sufficient. So no chart junk. And we will eliminate chart junk whenever we get it. Now, we want to look at the different chart types before we go and look at how to make charts. Pie chart, simple. Anytime you have individual parts that create a total, and you want to compare the parts to the total, you can use a pie. These are numbers. They're easily expressed just by a click of a button, not as numbers, but as percentages. And we'll see how to do that. So anytime you have parts compared to the whole, the pie is great. Column chart and bar charts. What is absolutely fantastic about the charting engine in Excel is when you have two variables. Now, we've summarized data by month and by product. Here we have the month here, and then the product and the legend. These are the horizontal labels or horizontal axis, and this is the legend, color-coded legend. What's so nice about this is that data came from this table. And as we've seen so far in this book, pivot tables are one of the most powerful ways to summarize data. So anytime you have a cross-tabulated data set, some, as we've talked about so many times, row headers and column headers. Totally excellent use when you have your data summarized like that to show in columns or bars. Now, the difference between these two is that sometimes with a bar chart, the fact that it's tilted horizontally means you can see the difference between each bar more forcefully in a visual way than you can if they're columns. But they're very similar. That's kind of the only real difference. Actually, there's one other. If you have really long labels here, then sometimes the bar chart works better than a column chart. Oh, and this is a stacked column, and the only difference is we have some categories in our legend. But here, instead of showing, here they show individual bars. Here, oh, they group them together. So you get the actual total for March, and you can compare it to the total to February. Oh, March is much bigger. But you still retain some of the detail for the individual total. This is called a stacked bar. There's also a stacked column. There are line charts. Actually, let's scroll way down here. Line and XY scatter. And these are oftentimes confused. The easy way to remember is an XY scatter has two numbers. You count out the x-axis and then up the y-axis. Or it could be out this way and down. But it's always counting one direction and a second direction. With line charts, even though you may have a number down here, this is considered a category because they are equidistant. Each one of these boom, boom, boom is the same distance. These happen to be years. If you look up here, we have a category of month. And down here we had a category of month, or you could have a store or something. So for a line chart, this is simply a category, and you count up the vertical axis. All right. There is one other type. This is a histogram. This is when the columns are touching. And you only do that when you have a category that spans from one number to the next, and then the next category immediately starts where that one left off. So in essence, there's no gap. And we'll see how to create this one. All right, so those are a little bit about the different chart types. There's a few other chart types in Excel also. Now, I would like to talk about how data gets put into a chart. These are column headers. These are row headers. And the intersection is a summarization. So right here, February boomerangs, there was two criteria for adding. Now, if the column headers are equal to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, if they're equal to or greater, then by default they get thrown into the horizontal axis, and this shows up in the legend. So anytime you have data like this, you highlight it. And I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut for the default chart, and we'll see how to change the default chart later in this video. It's Alt F1. And by the way, that's just, the column chart is just amazing. Do you see with just a click how it just immediately gave us a pretty useful chart? Now, I'm not going to worry so much about formatting this, right? Whoops. I just want to take a look. So we can clearly see these ones showed up here. These ones showed up here. Now, this is easy to change. You can just come up to the context-sensitive ribbons, design, and switch. Boop, boop. But I want to take a little bit closer look. So, and you can sort of see color-coded when you have a chart selected. Just like with the formula, there's something called range finder. You can see there's the data. There's the labels in the horizontal, and there's the legend. Now, I want to go up and look specifically what Excel did. I'm going to select the chart. I'm going to go up to the design, select data, and this is the real power of a chart. All right, so what it does is there's something called a series and a category. The series are going to be the numbers. The category is going to be the horizontal axis. And look what it did. Toys, boomerangs, kites. It got these words from these cells right here. Not only that, but if I click on toys and then click edit, very important to see that series name. Oh, so they're calling these series. And the series are the numbers. So you can see from our chart, the label toys, which is in the legend, is actually the name for these numbers right here. 500, 2,150, 8,839. Series name, series values. I'm going to click OK. And so for each one of these, this dialog box is the most powerful part of the charting engine because you have power over what to do with it. You can add a new one, edit, which we just clicked on, or remove. And sometimes charts don't guess right, and we'll run into that later. Over here, here is the horizontal. You can see that, boom, it got those from our column headers. You can edit those too, which we will do later. All right, that's just a little bit about series and category. the words series and category are used throughout Excel dialog boxes and when we do pivot charts. So legend, the series names, which are the names of the numbers, and then the categories or horizontal labels. All right, now let's go over and we're going to create our first chart now. Now we're going to go over to the sheet C1. And now we're going to create our first chart, which is a pie chart. Now pie charts, when you have individual parts and you want to show which proportion or percentage each is of the total, you use a pie chart. I have my name of the categories I'm going to use here. So the name of the category, these will come on the horizontal axis. This is the name of the series, and these are the numbers. So I highlight it. And it's very helpful to have the names up at the top of the column, just like we've talked about with properly set up data. I'm going to go up to Insert. That's where charts are. Under Charts, we have a bunch of chart types. I'm going to say Pie. I'm not going to use the 3D because that distorts the proportion. I'm going to use the 2D. If you have a situation where you have 6, 7, 8 pieces in the pie, sometimes you can, or if you have lots of little ones, you can have one pie in the chart represented by a little column or pie off to the side. We're going to select this one. And just like that, it does a pretty good job. Now, I want to add some labels just like we saw on the other one. I'm going to click on the legend. And what's the keyboard shortcut for delete? Delete. Now, I want to first, before I add the labels, I want to link this label to a cell. So I'm actually going to click on the link and then click up in the formula bar. Type an equal sign, and then click on the cell you want. You can see our formula. As soon as I hit Enter, the label is linked. Now if I change this here. By the way, the legend that we just deleted over here was automatically linked to these also. All right, now let's add some labels. Actually, before we do that, let's talk about formatting. Any element in a chart, and later we'll have lots of elements, you click on it, you click on it. Even the background here, when you click on it, all you have to do is Ctrl-1 to open up the Format dialog box. That's the same as the keyboard shortcut for formatting cells. Now, you could do that for the background too, Ctrl-1. So any chart element, you just click on it, Ctrl-1. Now, if you want to format the pie pieces, you can highlight. I'm going to click over here and highlight. Click one time. Notice that all the pie pieces are selected. Ctrl-1. If you formatted right now, it would format all the pie pieces. Escape. This is true for columns also, where there's many columns. If you want just one, you have to click it once and then click the individual piece a second time. And now you can see that only that one is highlighted. And when you Ctrl-1, you can format it. For example, you could do fill. And we'll do some formatting later. Let's add some labels. For labels, it doesn't matter where you're selected because you have to go up to the Chart Tools Context Sensitive Layout ribbon. And then here's our group. And we'll use this a bunch in the upcoming charts. Chart title, if there wasn't one. Chart data labels. Axis, we'll see how to use that one later. Legend, we saw how to delete that one so far, but here they are, data labels. Now, sometimes they don't have exactly what you want, so this one down at the bottom has all the power. More data label options. Now, right now, you can see it's starting to emerge. I'm going to select series, but that would be silly. That shows you the actual name of that series we talked about, so we don't want that one. Category. That shows me the actual category label. Value. If you want it, percentage, that's where you go to get your percentage. It knows how to calculate percentages. And then show leader line, that's when you drag it out, there'll be a little line. Now I'm going to click Close down at the bottom here. All of them are selected. Now you could format them while all of the labels, just like all those pie pieces were selected. If I went Control-B, then that would highlight all of them. But if you want to do something to an individual piece, after they're all selected, click on that individual piece and boom. Now I want to move these out, drag. That cursor right there is the move cursor. We've seen that a lot in this book so far. I'm pointing toward the edge. Sometimes it's kind of tricky. There's an automatic way to send these out, but I like to drag them just so I get them just in the right place. So there we have an example of a pie chart when you have individual pieces that make up a total, and you want to show the percentage or the proportion of the total. And we saw how to link a label and format. Now, I would like to talk about a couple things while we have this pie chart open. I'm going to try and drag this right down to the corner. What if you wanted to print this? Now, we already saw how to format a sheet with a table and a chart back in the page setup video we did. But let's just Control P here. We know that Control P is the print dialog box and print preview. Notice, though, that the table and the chart are together. I'm going to click Escape to get out of print preview. But what if you wanted just the chart? Boom. Click on the chart. And now when you Control P, it's just the chart. Now, what about style? I usually am pretty minimal with my style, but there are a lot of chart junk elements. No, I mean a lot of designs and stuff like that up in various places. Let's look at the design. There's some built-in ones in here that you can play with if you want. I usually add the ones I want myself without using those. Perfectly all right. There's some good ones there. There's a bunch of styles. I'm going to select maybe this blue style here. All right, OK, I kind of like that. You could go out to layout. We saw that we did some stuff there already. Format. I basically never mess around with this, although people do get pretty fancy. There's some cool stuff here. Now, what I want to show you next, I'm going to go back to the Design Context Sensitive ribbon. Imagine you just created this chart, and you put a lot of hard work into it, and you want to save it as a template. Totally easy to do in 2007 and 2010. You have this perfect chart, and you're going to use it over and over. You simply go, oh, Save as Template. Now, it's going to open up and actually save this into this pathway right here, which is a charts folder on our computer. You will be able to access this in the future. I'm going to highlight this name and say Blue Pie, for example. I guess I have my cap locks. Blue Pie. I love blueberry pie. And then I'm going to click Save. Now, let's highlight this, and I'm going to go up to Insert. And instead of go here, I'm going to click right there. And here's all the chart types. And sure enough, templates. I can click on my template. I just love that because I have my few styles that I use all the time. I just come here, click OK, and just like that, we have that. We've used that template. Now, I'm going to click on this and hit Delete. Next thing we want to look at that's very useful is the default chart. Now, I showed you back on CT1 sheet. We created this chart with a keyboard shortcut, Alt F1. So I'm going to show you how to set or change the default chart. Now, I like the default chart. This is the one that Microsoft has. But if you don't, no problem. You can change it. I'm going to go back to the sheet. Let's see. C1. I am going to click, well, we don't have to click on a chart, but we do have to go to Insert and back over to the Charts group. And right there, the dialog launcher, I'm going to go to select any single chart I want, one of the built-in ones or one that you built. And that's it. All you got to do is set as default. So now that it's set as default, next time I highlight this, this will create a pie chart by default. I'm going to Alt F1. Oh, that is so cool. So if you, in your job, you do the same kind of chart all the time, that is just a huge time saver. Now I'm going to delete that. I'm going to change it back because I like my default Microsoft chart. But I got to show you that because it's really cool. Columns set as default. Click OK. So now when I highlight this and Alt F1, I have my default chart. All right, I'm going to delete this. Now we want to talk about column chart. I'm going to go over to the sheet C2. And here's our cross-tabulated data, usually created with pivot tables. I'm going to notice that I have column headers or field names and then row headers right here. I'm going to highlight this, not including the totals. By the way, that's a big caveat. When you go back C1, when you're doing pie charts, please don't select the total. That's a common mistake I see teaching all the time. All right, I'm going to go back over to C2. Not without the totals, and now I want to use my keyboard shortcut, Alt F1. And again, what's so beautiful about the column is that we have our cross-tabulated data, and it just picks it up perfectly. Now let's change some things on this. I want to add a title. So how do I go? I go up to Layout, Labels, Chart Title, Above. I'm immediately going to link this to a cell. Now, earlier in the video, I clicked up here and hit the equal sign, but all you have to do is hit with the label, either axis label or chart title selected, hit F2. And then you can see it's jumped up there. Type an equal sign and click on A1. Enter. All right. I'm going to click on this and then Ctrl 1 because I want to format the legend. And I'm going to say Show at the top. Close. OK, that's looking pretty good. Let's go up to Layout, Data Labels. I'm going to say Outside End, and that will show the amounts at the top. You know, that doesn't look so good. I'm going to click. I'm going to Control Z. I was going to try and delete them, but that would not. I'm going to leave this here like this. Now, these could be dollars or units. I happen to know that they're dollars. But notice the person didn't format this. Now, you can come to the cells and highlight this. And I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Control-Shift-4 for currency. Notice the labels immediately update. And I'm going to decrease the decimals. And so that's one way to do it. Another way is sometimes you really need to have some format here, but a different format here. So you can click on this. And what's the keyboard shortcut? Control-1. There's a lot of great things for the whatever axis you have selected. You can select the minimum and then type it in, the maximum and then type it in. That really doesn't come into effect here. And there's a few other things we can do, but I want to look over here at number. And then here it is, our number tab, just as we have looked at so many times so far in this class. I'm going to select number, for example, and then show a check mark for separator. That's just to show you that there is you can disconnect these by formatting it here. All right, now this is a column. I want to compare and contrast this to a bar, and we sort of already did that. But watch this. I want to show you how to copy a chart. I'm going to hold Control and Roll. I want to copy this, so I'm going to click on the outside edge and Control-C. And then I'm going to click right here and Control-V. So whole charts can be copied easily with a keyboard shortcut Control-C, Control-V. Now, change chart type. You can go to Design, Change Chart Type. Or you can right-click, Change Chart Type. I'm going to go to Bar over here and then select my one. I'm going to select that one right there. Now, the main difference between these two charts, sometimes the bar chart emphasizes differences between column lengths more forcefully than this column chart. Also, if you have really long labels, then this is a great chart. Now, let's go ahead and I want to look at stacked column and bar. I'm going to copy this, Control-C, and then Control-V. There we have it. I'm going to right-click, Change Chart Type. You can right-click pretty much anywhere, and it says Change Chart Type. And I'm going to go Column, and there it is, Stacked Column. Now, I like this one. I don't like this one so much. It says 100% stacked column. Here's what it does. It's as if we took a pie chart and made them not round, but rectangle, up and down. Even though they may have different total amounts, they all have the same height. I don't like it. I like to emphasize. I guess there are some uses for it. I just don't have very many uses. But this one I like because I can see the height, and then within that height I can see the proportion that each amount contributes to the total. So I'm going to click this one. Click OK. Ooh, now there's a problem here. Look what we did. We copied this chart, and it took the max amount. So I'm going to click here and then Control-1. Now, and change the max to 40K. Click Close. And so now we can see a stacked column. The same thing if we had a bar. I'm going to copy this one, Control C, and then paste it here, Control V. And now I'm going to go change the chart type. Notice we copied the axis min and max here. So I'm going to right click, change chart type, go over to bar, and then I'm going to select this second one, stacked bar. And there we have it. So 35,000 probably we could get away with. All right, and again, these are nice because you can see within each total, it's as if we have just one category, right, for just the one March total. Oh, but within that March, we have individual pieces that make up the total March. Same over here. All right, now let's go look at a slightly different type of column chart called a histogram. I'm going to go over to C3, chart C3. Now, we talked about between criteria and criteria for counting numbers. So we have a bunch of test scores here, and we have an upper and lower and upper number. So for each one of these categories, we're going to count. So for people that got scores 10 up to 20, which means the lower one will be included but not the upper one, we want to count how many scores occurred in this range. Now this is a really useful type of chart in all sorts of fields, whether you have test scores from tests or times from a manufacturing facility or all sorts of scientific applications. Histograms will help us reveal patterns in the data. Where did most of the scores in our case occur? Which one of these? And we'll have column heights for each one of these, and we can see an up and down pattern. However, because these categories go from 0 to 10, and then immediately the next category is like touching the upper end of this one from 10 to 20, 20 to 30. So the fact that we have 20s here and 30s here, that means these categories are continuous. And that's when you want to change the gap width so that the columns are actually touching. I'm going to click in the cell, and we're going to do the formula. We actually did this a number of different ways with pivot tables and with formulas. I'm going to use the COUNTIFs formula. Actually, in the homework problems, I have a bunch of different solutions. I have you do a histogram, so you got to look there. There's some good solutions for that. Criteria range, I'm going to click there, Control Shift down arrow F4. That's criteria range. The first criteria, whoops. Comma, the first criteria, well, I need to take that number right there. So I'm going to say in double quotes greater than or equal to. We talked about this earlier, that anytime you have your comparative operator and you need to join it with the ampersand to a number, you have to put that in quotes, use the ampersand, and then put the number. All right, that's criteria 1, comma, Control Shift down arrow F4, comma to get to criteria 2. And this one's going to be in double quotes less than, in double quote, ampersand, and that. Close parentheses. That formula will work all the way down. Double click and send it down. You can also do this with a pivot table. Now, I'm going to go ahead. I have my labels, and then these are category labels. And I actually created this with a formula. This is a text formula that just joins these two things with a up to, or however you want to do it. Those are our labels. These are our numbers. I'm using the keyboard shortcut Alt F1. Now, let's get rid of this right here. Delete. I can already see that's looking pretty good. I'm going to click on this, and I want to change the font. That's too big. You can do it a few different ways. Unfortunately, when you Control 1, there's no font here. There used to be in earlier versions. So you can right-click Font, or you can even go to the Home ribbon and just use your regular font box. I'm going to change it to 12. Now you click on the columns, and notice when I click once, they're all selected, which is what I want. Control 1 to format that chart element. There it is, gap width. Change it to 0. Whoop. Absolutely a great trick for histograms, fill, and vary color by point. Look at that. That's totally cool. I'm immediately going to go up to Layout, and I want Labels, Outside End. Looking good. For a chart like this, you must label Actually, before I do that, I'm going to click on these horizontal lines and delete. You know, do I really need this? No, that looks like chart junk to me. I chose to put them up here. That is the count, but we do need to put a label here. So I'm going to go up to Layout, Labels, and then the axis. So I want vertical. I'm going to say rotate it, and I'm going to type frequency or count. I hope I spelled it right. By the way, F7 works on chart elements also. I want a label down here, so I'm going to go back up to Labels, Axis, and Horizontal. Below. And I'm going to just type test scores. And I'm going to, in parentheses, I'm going to hit F7 since I'm a bad typer, and that looks like I got it right. Enter. Test scores. These are test scores, but these are actually categories, right? All the test scores were counting from 30 up to 40. So how many people that took the test got a test score between 30 and 40? 7. How many people got 60 to 70? 20. So clearly an awesome way to see the pattern. Looks like most of the data is right up here in the middle. The height of the columns is much smaller over here. And again, the fact that we don't have any gap width indicates visually that there is no distance. These categories touch. It also indicates that it's continuous data. There is no gap. By the way, the same logic if you have discrete data or counting data, or anytime you have categories, qualitative categories like words or something, you want to leave a gap. All right, next we want to look at a line chart. I'm going to go over to Sheet 4. Actually, I'm going to go over to Sheet 5. Now, a line, we talked about in the beginning of this video, line is when you have one number on the vertical axis. XY scatter, which we'll do next, is when you have two, an X and a Y, one on the horizontal, one on the vertical. That's an XY scatter. Two numbers. We're doing a line here, so we need one number on the vertical axis. But look at this. I have years. These I want to show up on the horizontal. And then we have 3 products we sold. And we want to see the up and down trend for each one of these products. Line charts, one number, and they're great for showing trends over time. So I'm going to highlight this data, and guess what? Set up the same way, but we got our year here. Notice this is a great type of setup that could be created with a pivot table, and we would group individual transactional dates by year and then show our year here. All right, so I'm going to go up to Insert, and there's my line. I'm going to select this one. No, I'm going to select this one with the dots right at the individual changes. So there's our line chart. I'm going to click here, Ctrl 1, show it at the top. Close. I'm going to add a chart title. I'm going to go to Layout, Chart Title, above. I'm going to hit F2 equal sign. Notice that's happening up there, and click in A1, Enter. All right, so what do we need to do here? That probably is obvious what it is. Into the wind sales. So we need to know whether these are units or dollars. So these are units. So you know what? I'm actually going to go up here in cell A1 and hit F2. Oh, I have a formula. OK. Kind of nice. So into the whale, into the wind, and I'm going to edit this formula, unit sales. Now I'm going to change the font size here. So I'm going to go up to Home and type 12. All right, so line charts. That's when we have one number we're measuring here. Now let's go look at XY scatter. That's when we have two numbers. Anytime you're trying to find the relationship between two numbers, if there is one, a scatter chart is perfect. Now look at this. Our study, students' final score. Is there a relationship? You would think that the more hours you study, the higher your score. Well, here's some raw data. Let's check it out. I'm going to highlight these first two cells and then Control-Shift-Down arrow to highlight all the way down. Go to Insert, Scatter, and let's get our scatter. Now, I'm way down here. I'm going to click on the edge and Control-X. Control Home, and then Control V. I'm going to scoot it down here. Click there, delete. I'm going to click here, F2 equal sign, and click in cell A1. I'm immediately going to come up and change the font size to 12. For an XY scatter like this, you better put labels unless it is just irrefutably, or you can easily understand what this is, and I don't. It says do hours study, predict final score. I'm actually going to put hours and test score here. So I'm going to go up to layout, and then horizontal below. I'm going to type hours studied, enter. I'm going to go up to axis and then vertical, score on test, enter. So it looks like there is some sort of relationship, right? The more hours you study, the higher your score. So this would be called a direct. And it's direct because as this one increases, this one tends to increase, right? If it was the other way, like as number of police increase, crimes go down or something like that, then it would be inverse. As this one increases, the y decreases. Now, one thing great, and this isn't a class about algebra, linear algebra and whatnot, but if you do linear algebra, you know the calculations, and Excel's great at it. There's the slope function, intercept, all sorts of forecast function. But that's a lot of hassle. If you want to just plot the raw data and figure out what the equation is, you can right-click the data points and say Add Trend Line. Here, this one, we're going to select linear. We're going to come down to the bottom and say equation and r squared. Equation shows you the linear equation that you use for predicting future values. R squared shows the influence that x has on y, not causation. I'm going to click close, and maybe click on these lines behind here and delete. Click on this and move it. Absolutely amazing. Hey, that's probably a faster way to get the equation with your slope and intercept than it is to do with functions in your sheet. All right, this was an XY scatter. And we have two numbers, out this axis, up this axis. Now, this is kind of a bunch of data, and we don't know where exactly all the points are going to be. They're certainly not going to be on a straight line. So in this case, the scatter, the actual scatter points of the trend line is perfect. But there are situations where you have two numbers that are actually predicted by a model that do fit on a straight line. So let's go look at an example of that. I'm going to go to C7. And over here, we're going to do something called break-even analysis. Now, break-even analysis shows the units you're estimated that you're going to sell, the sales that you're estimating, the total cost, the total fixed costs, and net income. And then you plot it. So I have some assumptions down here. I'm going to make this table totally cool. I'm going to even have the units linked to numbers in an assumption table. So I want to start the number of units from 0, and the increment's going to be 3,500. So this is like predicting what we think will sell. So in this top cell, I'm going to say equals, click on that B17, enter. Equals the cell above plus the increment. And I'm going to lock it with the F4 key going down. Control Enter. I'm going to highlight all of these cells. And in the active cell at the top, I'm going to say units, one cell to the left, times my estimated price. And I'm going to lock it with the F4 key going down across the rows. Control Enter. I'm going to come over to fixed costs. These are the costs that do not change. Equals. And there's the fixed cost right there. F4 to lock it going down across the rows. Control Enter. Now, total costs. I'm going to say equals. And here are my sales. We've been given down here manufacturing costs as a percentage of sell price or total sales. So I'm going to say one cell to my left times 0.55. And I'm going to lock that B15, F4 twice, lock the row reference, Control Enter to populate those formulas. And finally, oops, no, it's not right. F2, plus our fixed cost. Control Enter. Now our net income. This is these are all predicted amounts based on these units. And it's based on this $25. So this is a linear relationship. So when we plot this using an XY scatter, we're actually not going to have to show a trend line. We can just, instead of individual points, show a line. Now here it is, totally awesome. This is our X that predicts sales, total costs, and then fixed costs. Not really, because that's the same number all the way down. But nevertheless, for our XY relationship, here's the X and 1, 2, 3 Y's. No problem. The XY scatter chart can completely understand that, as long as you set up X as the column to the left and all your Y's. Be sure to put a name at the top of each column also. I'm going to go to Insert, Scatter, and I'm going to select this one right here. And just like that, that is the famous fixed variable cost sales chart that we look at. That crossover point right there is the break-even point. Now let's add some labels here. I'm going to go up to Layout, Axis, the horizontal. I'm going to put below and type units. That is the X, the predictive variable. I'm going to go up to vertical, and I'm going to type, oh, I don't need to put anything here. I'm going to hit Delete key. And the reason why is these are in dollars. That unit is obvious, and we have this over here. I'm going to click on this, Control 1. I'm going to show it at the top, close, and add a label, layout, chart, title above, and say something like break even, just break even. That is a great trick to know in Excel. Now, those were two XY scatters, one for a trend line, one for break even. Just remember, XY is for two numbers, line is for a single number on the vertical axis. I'm going to go over to C8, and we want to see how to add two chart types. Now, these are sales and expenses by month. And I'd like to add the expenses, but as a line. So let's see how to do that. The first thing is, how do you add data to a chart? I'm going to show you 3 totally cool ways. Watch this. Control C for copy. Click on the edge, and Control V. It adds it just like that. Control Z. Another totally awesome way to do this, and this works in all versions, is Escape to turn the dancing ants off. You click on the chart, and notice we have our range finder. You can just point to the edge and click and drag. Is that totally awesome? Control Z. And finally, the way that you really have power, because sometimes you have to build complicated charts, is you go to Design, Select Data, and you use the Add. Series name, it's expenses. When you do it this way, be sure and delete that little thing in array syntax. Delete it. And then highlight your numbers. And then click OK. Click OK. Now I'm going to click here, Control 1. Notice I keep putting it at the top. I just kind of like it at the top. That's oftentimes in lieu of a label. Now, how do we change this? I don't want columns. I click on the individual series. This is a series here. That's the series name. Right click. And then change series chart type. I'm going to go down to line, and there it is. I'm going to select this one. See how that one looks, and then click OK. Boom, just like that. We have January through June sales and expenses. All right, one last amazing chart trick, and we saved the best for last. In 2010, there's something called spark lines. Totally amazing. They're cell charts. And I definitely remember before, all the versions before 2010, I used to make, for some of my statistical charts, little cell charts like this. And I'd have to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different charts, and it took forever. But watch this. I highlight the charts. As long as your data is before, you go to spark lines, and I'm going to put a column. It wants to know where the data is. Right here is the location. That's what I highlighted. It will know that these numbers should go in that cell. Click OK. Now, what can you do? You can come up to this Sparkline Tools. You could change the color. You could say what the high point is, the low point. You could change the color for high and low. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to uncheck low. Totally cool. Look at that. Now I'm going to come down here, and you could do it with a line. Insert. Over here to line. Data range. And click OK. Wow, check that out. Now I'm going to go to high point and low point, but I want to go change the colors. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say high point maybe is green. Low point is red. And there I have an amazing spark lines from the famous chart master Edward Tufte. Did a bunch of really amazing books. I went and saw him live in a day-long seminar once. He's the guy who coined the phrase chart junk, and these spark lines little cell charts. All right, that's a lot about charting. We'll see you next video. All right, now over to the file, Slaying Excel Dragons Homework, Chapter 1 to 9. We're on the sheet, Chapter 7, pages 465 to 506. Ooh, we got some great homework problems for charting. Most of these, though, here's the homework problem. Here's an example of an answer. Most of them I'm going to ask you to summarize with pivot tables, because that's, our data doesn't usually come summarized. So there's 91, 92 homework and an answer, 93 and an answer, all the way to 96. Some great chart homeworks. All right, we'll see you next video.